No, I meant Crofton's laugh. I think maybe you were just inhaling. And all right,
Oh.
hello. We're live on the
Oh, yeah.
internet. And I'm gonna.
Live. Hello, Wiki Kitten. Kitten.
I don't think she's here yet. We didn't tweet, and we don't
Oh.
consistently go at the same time, so it's not like she's gonna know.
Oh.
Hello, we're live. All right.
I appreciate
Let me
our loyal
host my
followers.
channel. I do too.
And maybe I'll retweet that tweet. It'll be my first tweet in forever. Get my 30 followers on here.
Yeah. Hey. You know what? Why don't you tweet that we're live, Mike, and then I'll retweet you. You wouldn't know what to do. Never mind.
It's complicated.
I'm like, hashtag tweet? You're like, you don't know how to use this.
What's the link of the video? Bo's like, let me just take care of it. I wrote a whole.
You don't even know where we are on Twitch, right?
Twitch? No. I can't get on there because you made it so you have to make an account. And I'm like,
you can go there without an account, dude.
You just can't see the chat. And then it's like, what's the point?
Yes, you can see the chat. You just can't chat yourself.
Yeah,
No, I went there and you couldn't. You said you had to follow or something like that.
No, you don't.
No, that's to chat.
Well, every time I've been there, it's been blank.
There's the link. There you go.
God damn it. Let's just start.
Well, I'm posting.
The link doesn't work.
We're live. All right. Let's do this. Let us do this. We're doing this live. We're in the live zone. All right. I don't feel like I feel like maybe there's a mic problem, but we're gonna go ahead anyways.
No, it sounds fine.
Mike Crofton just wants. All right. Good, bad, or bullshit. Episode 189. This is the 189th time we're doing this. People.
Hey, I retweeted it, Bo.
Sweet.
It feels like so much more.
All right. Here we go.
Bo, can you like my retweet, please?
I will.
That's how, is this
I
how
will.
social media works?
Well,
you call your
Crofton-
friends on the phone and be like, hey, I tweeted something. Can you go?
Oh, sweet. I'm going to retweet.
Good, bad, or bullshit episode 189. Quote retweets are kind of better because they provide context. But 5. Crofton. 4. 3.
Hello and welcome to the Good, Bad, or Bullshit podcast. My name is Crofton Steers. I am the McDonald's of this podcast, if you will, the franchise. With me every week are my two co-franchise holders. I'm talking about the Subway of this podcast, Mike Hodgins. Mike, how are you?
Always fresh.
Oh,
Hi, Jared.
And now,
Isn't he a pedophile? God damn it.
and of course, the Kentucky Fried Chicken of this podcast. I'm talking about Mo Schwartz.
Yeah, boy, come get you some chicken, Southern style.
KFC.
I feel that this is pretty close to perfect.
I don't know
guess
what does Colonel Sanders talk like? Is he a Gentile Southerner? That's what I should be
Southerner. I don't
doing?
think you're doing more Texas.
Well, Texans are from the South.
It's a different kind
Thank
of
you,
South.
Crofton.
He's more like, I do declare this chicken is fat.
I think your Subway recipes are delicious, except they're missing one key ingredient, and that's chicken grease. You need to put at least 500 grams more of chicken grease in each of your subs.
Well, this analogy went off the rails pretty quick. It was brought to you, listeners, by our infatuation with the Nugs for Carter social media phenomenon, which we were discussing pre-show. But that aside, we apologize for missing a week. We have busy lives, and we try to get these solid episodes out as often as we can. And now I feel in good spirits today. So my guts tells me, full of Big Macs, tells me this is going to be a good one.
Yeah, I feel like it's a day where I would order a foot long. That's what it would be like today.
It's a good day.
Yeah, you
I
would
hope
order a foot long.
I hope we get back on track though, and get back to our weekly. I mean, we've been like week on, week off because of,
we do
various life things, but
we do what we can. Speaking of what we can, what have you gentlemen been up to lately in the past 2 weeks?
Oh,
Maple syrup season, baby.
Oh, it's tapping time for Mike. This is exciting. This is the time of year when Mike has more tweets than usual. And by more, I mean like one more per week than usual, because there's a sweet photo of you tapping maple trees.
Tapping that tree.
Sorry, didn't you say it was maple season?
Did I tweet that?
Yeah, you've tweeted photos of you cooking it in the big cauldron and tapping the trees. This is
sweet.
This is an exciting time of year for Mike and for fans of Mike on the show. Give him a follow at mlhodgins.com and say hi to him. And don't forget to put the hashtag Nugs for Carter in the
because it fits right in. I've been spending time in the woods helping my friend and Crofton's friend Robert, and Bo's friend too. He's got a big wood lot, and then we tap the trees for the maple syrup. It's fun times.
Sweet.
We built this hillbilly boiler for this new boiler we got. It's like made out of basically a big pile of bricks that we set this big pan precariously on top of, but it like looks kind of awesome. But if there was a strong wind, the whole thing might fall apart.
So I've been watching a lot of playoff hockey right now, which, I would argue is, stereotypically Canadian thing to do. You're making a ton of maple syrup or doing that, which I would argue is a stereotypical Canadian thing to do. Bo, what sort of stereotypical Canadian thing have you been up to?
Playing video games, recording podcasts.
Saying a lot, saying
the A, and saying oot, and saying
Have you been complaining about the weather?
No, weather's perfect. Weather's been perfect.
Man, you're like an American.
What are you talking about? This is perfect Canadian weather. There's never.
You haven't mentioned one Canadian thing that you've done in the past 2 weeks.
I'm a horrible Canadian. Like culturally speaking, or in the stereotype.
Self-hatred. That'll do.
No, you should have. Well, if you had apologized, I would have accepted it.
Yeah, I do apologize a lot, so I guess you could say I've been apologizing.
Speaking of Canada, happy 420, guys! It's we're recording. It's the reefer day of weed. The weed day.
What would happen? Does that happen in the States? Like, so for any American listeners, basically 1,000 people go to Parliament Hill, equivalent of I don't know what it would be the equivalent, not the White House, I guess, but, Congress, equivalent. Whatever. And then sit there and smoke weed in the face of police officers, and no one does it. They just let them do it. It's been going on for years.
But it's funny because it's like 420 is they recognize that in the States. I think it started with these kids that smoke behind their school.
But do they do it on the lawn of
No, obviously not. But like this year is interesting for us because we're going to be like legalizing weed, which is I think there's legislation that's being tabled or whatever. But it's pretty big deal. It's one of those things that you just felt never was going to happen, even though it made so much sense. But yeah,
one kind of interesting thing that I heard is sort of the fallout of it is like, so it's going to be legal in like a year apparently, but there'll be no amnesty for anyone who has a criminal record for like small amounts of weed after that. So if you had a criminal record which prohibits you from applying for certain jobs or all that kind of stuff, like say you get charged by a cop 2 months before this thing takes an action, that will remain on your record.
But you can apply. There's a system they have in place to apply for amnesty for your criminal record to be, but they won't automatically do it, which I don't think that they should. Like if there's something that's a law, and until it's no longer law and you break the law, well, that's what the criminal record is.
I call that bullshit, but whatever.
Nah, whatever. I think it's good. All right. Speaking of giving verdicts,
yeah, fuck those people. Let them rot.
Speaking of good and bullshit and bad, I think it's time to pick up a random topic, Mike, and give it to
it's
verdict.
Up to you. We're waiting on you. Are you ready to give us our topic by pulling?
I just want to point out we just basically had a mini one. I said that the lack of amnesty was bullshit. Crofton said it was good. Bo, where do you stand? Amnesty.
I would just go all out and say bad. I mean, come on.
All right, perfect. We got a full spread. All right, now pull the machine.
All right, Mike, you better go. Crofton's getting antsy here.
The topic today is wealth
Oh,
Have
no,
we've definitely touched on this.
We've
Didn't we do
done
money?
money. We've done money. I'm pretty sure was the
yeah,
topic.
this
we've
is just
definitely we've done money. We've done. Have we done capitalism? I think so.
yeah. It certainly
Yes.
fits in. Is it redundant? But yeah, whatever. Wealth.
It's
Well,
fairly redundant, but I mean,
Well,
well,
I don't
because
know that it is
wealth
because
isn't
money, you could
necessarily
be like, okay,
money.
money's a tool. We have talked about that. Capitalism is a system, and I feel like wealth is more like where it lies. Like,
Yeah. So
if you're
so
like,
so like we can talk about capitalism being self-serving, and we can talk about money being the system through which we barter trade, but we can talk about the concept of wealth in that in a pool of people in a society, you can be someone who has more than what is required for a satisfactory life. Let's put it
is
that way.
that what you're defining as wealth? Because I don't
yeah,
know that I would define
Well,
it as.
it's an abundance, right? Like
Yeah, like
wealth.
Donald Trump's like, I have more than satisfactory life. Is like,
Well,
no, that's not wealth.
the problem
Wealth
with
is
that definition is that it's highly subjective, right? Someone rich can be like, I don't have enough. Who are you to tell me
yeah,
that
right.
my $10 million is enough to sustain me and my family? Like, but if you take a sample group of people, let's say the population of Canada, and posit that 1% have more than the remaining, let's say 99%, one could define that as wealth.
and that's also like you guys are talking to money, but you can say like I have a wealth of knowledge because I
Yeah,
do.
but I mean, it said that there was a qualifier with the topic that said, financial, monetary. We're not talking like I have a wealth
Oh,
of friends. Bo Schwartz has a wealth of Twitter followers, whereas I am quite poor in that respect. We're
see
not
that
talking
change.
about that. We're talking monetary, financial.
Well, see, I didn't know about that. Or is there any other asterisks on this topic
No,
that I
those are
need
the
to know
two.
about?
No.
Okay.
I feel like it includes assets. You got
Sure.
like you own lots of property, you got lots of stocks and bonds and money and inheritance and all that makes you a wealthy person.
Financially wealthy.
Yes.
That does. I'm
Yes,
just
we're not
saying
gonna
it
be
does.
like,
It totally. If you eliminate all the other stuff, it feels really redundant to
It's
stuff
just
we've already talked about.
wealth
But
can be used as an adjective in a number of poetic ways, as we do in the English language. But wealth to me could be you have $0, but you have like a ton of land, and you
well,
because
then you would still be wealthy even if you had
the
$0.
concept it's based kind of on the concept of property. Like if you own things, you have options and agency in the group.
Which we talked about private property too.
So when you have a ton of it, is what we're talking is basically it's like this. We know there are people who do not have much in wealth and thus have limited options to a happy life, or happiness including taking care of loved ones, things like that, whatever that sort of means. And then we have folks who have more than they can spend necessarily to achieve this goal, more than they need. And so why is that allowed?
well, see,
Basically,
okay.
why is that allowed?
So I think this topic is very. It's like one of those ones where Mike goes on about it being very like, well, it depends, and
A lot of
and it's circumstantial. A lot. Like for example, if you're when you use the term wealthy, like when you talk about money, when we did money or private property, when we use those individual terms, like those are things that you can own, and if you have a lot of something, you could be considered as wealthy. But what is considered wealthy in any given area of the world or place varies tremendously based on how what is valued in those areas, and just like the cost of living, all those sort of things. So somebody that has $1 million, which sounds like a lot of money, in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and somebody that has $1 million in Nairobi, probably have different levels of wealth, like
Sure.
at least in terms of how they
definitely agreed. It's relative, right?
So, but the term is uniform in the sense that, like, if you are wealthy, if you have wealth in particular area, that means that you are above I would imagine, above what would be considered the average in that area. So like if somebody in Vancouver is considered, a wealthy Vancouver resident, then you were assuming that they have that term. To me, I would assume that they have, a higher
but I
than
think it's got to
average
be
amount.
enough higher. Like if average is in any given area X and someone has like $50 more than that, I feel like you got to be quite above the average. I think. I think you have to be in the top 10% or something to be really wealthy. And we often talk about you have here the 1%, and who are they really referring to? And I know it's with the uber wealthy, and that there's a lot of wealthy people still below that as well. But again, if like average incomes are like just say for families, I'm just making up a number, 50,000, and you make 75, I don't know that you're wealthy compared to the 50 people. You're slightly better off. I wouldn't say it's wealthy, but if you are worth, if the average is 50,000 a year and you make $1 million a year, I'm like, okay, I would say you're wealthy compared to someone who makes $50,000 a year. So, and I think you're right that it is highly contextual, depending on where you are, what your money buys, what you get with that.
It's such a strange concept to me because, like, the idea of wealth, and I think it's problematic for a lot of people, because I like to think as a baseline, like we're a part of a community or a country whose laws are intended or designed at some level to ensure the basic human rights and needs are met of all the people in the group, right? Like if, we go to lunch, the three of us, and let's say I'm like, I show up and I'm like, guys, I'm just broke. I can't eat. I'm not having anything. You guys are going to be like, no, we'll get you breakfast. You came out for lunch because you want everyone in your community to have their basic needs met and get some eggs and some bacon, right? But the idea behind wealth is like, well, yes, like I have enough for breakfast and Mike has enough for breakfast, but then Crofton, he orders 200 eggs and he puts 188 of them in his pockets for no reason, just to save for later or whatever. And like ours, because we're not in sort of this communist social structure where we say, okay, you get your breakfast, you get your breakfast, you get your breakfast. We've designed our system to have self-agency within it. We've allowed for one might say shortcomings, or one might say positive benefits, is to amass more than we need for a happy life within our group of friends having breakfast.
And just for the record, while Bo's like super hungry, I'm taking all those extra eggs and I'm just breaking them in front of him. Some of them I'm just rubbing on my body in his face.
I'm not gonna lie, this was somewhat inspired by true events, but
Yeah.
That's why Crofton has such excellent skin. It's all that raw egg he's rubbing in. But
it's true. No, I get your point, Bo, which brings me to asking, like, if all of us, let's say, go into socialism or whatever, if everybody had wealth, like we're talking about wealth, like if everybody was wealthy, would nobody be wealthy? Or is it just that everyone would be wealthy? And if everybody is wealthy, wouldn't that be good?
No,
right?
I think if it's an overabundance of resources within your community, I think it's possible for everyone to be wealthy. I just think you always scale it up to the next level, which is like everyone in our country is wealthy. Well, we have slavery. And we're screwing some other country or continent out of something. It's not that there isn't an abundance of resources on the planet at the moment in terms of human context. I just think that it takes work and means of production and humans to get there, and there isn't an abundance of that necessarily. Can't live both a life of leisure and a life of hard work.
It is an interesting question, though. Does wealth exist if everyone's wealthy, or living standards are high and people's needs are met, they have more than they need? Are we all wealthy, or does it only exist in juxtaposition to the people who don't have it? And I mean, I think it's like, I think of it more in that latter sense, that it does, at least in the way, because think of the way the world is now. It's just like we define wealth by people who have stuff, who have a lot of stuff, like trying to keep it simple and not get into like, ideas of who has more eggs, but just like who's a wealthy person, someone, you live in a big house, you make a lot of money, you own a lot of stuff. And so essentially you have resources and a lot of other people don't. I feel like it's as simple as that. And again, coming back to like, is that good thing or is bad or is it bullshit?
Well, I want to add on to that a little bit because I think accompanying wealth in the sense that you have means also comes leisure. I think like the two are inextricably linked. I think wealth is one of the hallmarks of wealth on a broad scale, not whether you have the latest phone every year or clothes from a very expensive place, like is the capacity for leisure and the capacity for agency, the capacity to decide to do nothing. Single mom with kid can't decide not to go and work the next day. She's got to feed her kid and the rent's going to come due or they get evicted and problems ensue. Right? And I think wealth and the dream of wealth is associated with leisure and ease. So I'd almost say if we were all wealthy, we'd all be engaging in leisure, which means no one's going out hunting, so no one's eating, and guess who starves? So I think when you said the words like we have to look at the world, the way the world really works is procuring food requires labor, and that requires actual intensive amount of time. If you don't spend any time in your day, I know I do, procuring food, everything comes out of a bag in a grocery store or a box. You maybe lose touch with the sense that a lot of man hours are spent transporting, growing, producing the food that I consume. And at a certain level, even though I work at a job and my days are full with productivity and video gaming, that I actually live quite a leisure-filled life. I live a wealthy life.
Oh yes,
to many
really?
in the world. And so anyways, the point being that leisure, the principle of leisure has to come into the conversation with wealth. Because
I sort of disagree with that. Like, I think that like you can, like, wealth is you can use it for a lot of things, but like it seems like some of the hardest, working people in the world who are never satisfied or never enjoying their wealth per se are just like, okay, I'm gonna do more deals or like I think of my wife's has an uncle who became a millionaire very early on running his own shop, and he could have easily retired, but no, like they had to drag him into retirement. And on the Hollywood side of things, you look at a guy like The Rock, who is gets up at like 4 a.m. is like doing a bunch of stuff like the gym, flying here and doing this show and then doing this, and like never taking real time to enjoy his wealth. And then like some of the people that have the least amount of wealth I know are the people that spend the most amount of time with their doing leisure.
I'd argue that that's his leisure. That you can label it as work. You can label something as work if it dovetails with your compulsion in life.
I just jump in here?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that this, and I've heard this before, being the distinction between, like, some people say like you can be rich and not say wealthy. And I think the idea of like when I really think of wealth, I tend to think of like, inherited estate, born into wealth. Like your family has massive money. You're like a Rockefeller or something like that, and there's so much wealth.
The Rock, we talked about him.
Rockefeller.
The Rock fella out in California. Okay, dad joke.
In any case, but when I think of wealth, I think of that as kind of like transcendent of generations. I think of monarchs as being exceedingly wealthy, whereas someone you can be rich and then blow it, right? But like it seems like when I think of wealth, I think that it persists more than just being rich. Like if you win the lottery, if you win $10 million, are you wealthy now, or did you just get rich? And I feel like those are kind of like worth teasing apart, because I think they're a little bit different. I mean, it's the same kind of thing, but I really feel like wealth is almost like a machine that you're a part of, like a family that just keeps, like the Trumps, where it's like his dad was rich, just keeps on coming down, and that
is wealth in a way. But in the new rich versus old rich thing, I think the difference between winning the lotto and money being handed down or whatever, it's the idea that like that money being handed down comes with businesses or land or whatever. If you have a constant way of generating money, if you don't just get a big lump sum, you could still, I would say, like if you take that lump sum and put it into investments, and you're making money off it, and you're managing to live independently and have a great income coming in where you're living in a fancy house and all that. Yeah, you're wealthy, but I think being wealthy involves like a generating aspect. Like it can't just be here's money and now it's over. That money's got to perpetuate or
Well,
those
I'd almost
assets
think of
at
it
some point.
like, because we talked about capitalism, and I read a bit of some Marx, and there's almost like a really simple equation he has, which sort of is like sort of common people versus say capitalists or people with money, and the idea being like, so it's almost like an equation. You have capital. Well, let's not get into the equations here. But so if you're a rich person, you're a wealthy person.
A lot of math on this
Look,
episode. You've already done algebra.
It was going to be
with
like
the
fake
X.
math because it was
Think
like
of-
C plus.
Think
C.
of
So-
someone who
so
sits on a
just
patent.
wait. Let me finish. Let me just finish this.
Finish not saying the equation. You set us all up for it.
Just okay. I'm gonna say it out instead. Stop trying to cut in and be like, I have 100 eggs and Crofton eats 30. I'm like, no, just like.
A hater, egg hater.
So bottom line is this. Okay, so if you're, I think this applies to this conversation. So like if you're a capitalist or in this case a wealthy person, you start with capital. So in the Marx context, you have money, you have resources, and then you use that to create something to sell products or your business, whatever, and your end goal is to gain more capital, right? So that's what you wind up with, more wealth. But the equation for working people is it's like the reverse. It's like you have no capital, you only have labor, and then you sell that to get a little bit of capital, and then you use that capital, which very small amount, to then buy product again. And it's like, and then so it's like kind of reversed. Like wealth leads to more wealth, and if you don't have it, you're not going to get it. And that's the Marx kind of equation. And I really think
how many eggs do I end up with?
you're not wealthy, so none in the end, and Bo none. And me.
No, I actually negative eggs. I owe eggs.
Yeah.
Just-
Yeah, you might owe. Actually, your children might owe.
I owe eggs, and in this type of society we live in, it's indentured servitude by virtue of what I owe. Effectively,
It is.
But
I was actually listening to that, and it does, like, it's funny when you say it like that. I'm like, oh yeah, that is what I'm doing. Like I am,
Yeah, you sell your labor to get the capital, and then you just use it to buy the things you need. But a capitalist has all the capital, and then they do the reverse to just get more capital. And it's kind of interesting
because like you own a property in which like the people that live there are paying rent, so you're not. It's instead of like in my case, I'm selling my work, but in that case you're getting capital through other means, which is
I have to cut in and shout out Tondagosa in the chat room, who says we're talking about the eggs and the egg knots.
It's true. The eggs and the egg knots.
That was really funny.
wait, I don't get it.
The eggs and the
The
egg
haves and
knots.
the have-nots.
Are the egg knots like
The have-nots.
People who don't have wealth. Have-nots.
because they don't have eggs?
That's right.
Yeah, well, yeah.
We don't have eggs.
We've lumped in the whole eggs wealth thing.
We don't have
got
the
lumped together here.
We don't
but-
have the extra eggs to procure more eggs for no reason than the
I
accumulation
blame
of
Bo
eggs.
for this.
Now, okay, let's get back on track here, and say, so again, coming back to like, is this good? Is it good? Is it good that there are people who start with wealth, and then they have the option, because the dominant narrative in like the capitalist West is that yes, we need those people. They're the captains of industry. Without their capital well invested through shrewd business techniques like Donald Trump. Did you guys know, incidentally, that he's a good businessman? 'Cause apparently he is. He says a lot. And so anyways, you need those people because they're the job creators. And without them, everything falls apart. It's like Ayn Rand and the whole, like, you need that class of wealth because they essentially allow the rest of us to do something. And
By withholding eggs,
but
effectively.
is that true?
Though.
I'm like,
but,
I don't know.
But by
think so.
withholding eggs, like if there were a mechanism in the system to say once you have greater than X amount of eggs, you've got to put it back into. Remember, we're all at the table having breakfast, so we want to make sure everyone gets a breakfast. So if you have like 80 breakfasts worth of food in front of you, and there's no law or nothing in there saying that you have to, like they call, let me be a breakfast creator. Without me, you won't create breakfast. Well, then that person can be withholding. The power resides with them. It effectively confers power. The wealth confers power through that means. And
There's
I know we don't want to talk about redistribution of wealth, but the idea being that we'll let the community decide what to do with excess in the community. Let's all decide what to do with Crofton's extra 80 breakfast that he has.
Well, I think, I want to get too hung up on this analogy about breakfast because there was something interesting that Crofton said.
Mike doesn't like the breakfast analogy.
Well, I think it's often it's throwing my brain off because you keep talking about it. I'm like, okay, we're
it's
not
complicated.
Talking, because,
I know.
No, it's not that it's complicated. It's that you're talking about an asset versus actually capital. But the leisure point, I think, is what's interesting. Because when Crofton was saying that, so if we, I think it was you that said, I can't remember, but would we all be wealthy if we all had leisure and choice and that kind of thing? Would we all be wealthy? And because some people would say that that's a real possibility with sort of automation and ideas about things like basic income, which are starting to gain more prominence and being like, as we lose jobs to automation, it actually is going to free us for leisure and choice in life to be like, if the main means of production are now essentially done by different types of AI and automation, now we have the choice to work less. And because we're all human and there's excess wealth, that we just get paid a basic income, and you can choose to, like Bo, play video games all day long, or like me, go and make maple syrup in the woods, do whatever you want. And is that choice, is that freedom, is that then wealth? But I think in the context, I don't know that it is.
Just going back to the eggs. When Bo was making that
Mike sort of not impressed. He made a really good point, and you're like, but the eggs. Wait, the eggs. 1 minute.
No, but like what Bo said about the eggs and like having them all in front of him and stuff like that makes me realize that the main concept is like, no matter how greedy I am, I'm still gonna, like, I can only eat one breakfast, right? Like I can only eat so much. And then, like, I can either, like, give these other breakfasts of eggs to other people, or they go in the trash because they're a finite resource. Money I get and wealth is not. Like, it's – but one thing I've wondered about before is, like – and I've not been in this situation, and none of the three of us have, even though I have much more wealth than other people. I don't have so much that I – independently wealthy that I can just, enjoy doing whatever, never have to worry about money, take helicopter rides everywhere. But there are people like, and Mike mentioned them, like the super rich, and there's a high amount of people that are very, very wealthy, like that just have more money than they can know what to do with or spend, for that matter, in their lifetime. And sometimes you see these things where it breaks down, like how much money does this person have for how many generations that wouldn't have to work, just by inheritance and stuff. And sometimes it's like super egregious. And I've often wondered, it's like, if you have that much money, like what do you do? Like, what is your goal now? Like, where are you, like, what is the idea of just continuously acquiring wealth to obnoxiously high degrees? Because
it's the end in itself.
I'm talking about like 10, like let's say I had $40 million. That's probably well enough for me to live in fancy luxury, and I wouldn't even have to think about it. So like to have 100 million or 200 million or 300 million or more, it's like, what is the point of that extra money at that? Like
it's that not like, I mean, I agree with you. I heard some stat the other day. There was some hedge fund manager somewhere was making an hourly wage of $1 million, $1,053,000 an hour. It was what he was equivalent of making a year. And yeah, so to your point of like, that's insane. But like, I think for the wealthy, and again, this is what like Marx pointed out, if you're a capitalist, that is the goal. It's to make more, because what you start with is, for everyone else, you start with nothing. And what your goal is to try to amass maybe enough wealth and comfort that you can retire and enjoy some time of leisure. But if you're a wealthy person, you start with all that wealth. And then, so what do you do with it? You basically take it and turn it into more wealth. That's how capitalism operates. And there are the capitalists, and then there is labor. and you're one or the other basically.
But I'm sure
So I
there
feel
are
like
those
what you
people.
say, like, what's the point? That's the point. More. There's never enough because you start with it probably, or many of these people start with it, and you just want to make more.
Yeah, I think you don't have to be born into it to get to that point in your lifetime either. That does happen as well, and I would add that that to me this is like video games before video games were a thing. Like it's a game. Like I think this is viewed as participating in a game. Like if you play poker, the stakes can be very real if you bet your entire fortune on a hand. And if you're betting these, that might be addictive to bet large amounts. And I think that when you engage in business and you put up capital with the hopes of gaining more capital, but there's a bit of risk associated with it, which means you could lose out. Winning the game has satisfactory implications for the people involved in it. And then there's a whole culture, a business culture, built up around engaging in this game. And no one talks about it like it's a game. They talk about it like it's life itself. And belonging to that club is very
like a point
appealing.
Scoreboard almost. Like it's like a scoreboard. Like I remember,
Sure.
like Vince McMahon, who is the Rock's previous employer,
The Rockefellers, I got it. Yeah.
Runs World Wrestling Entertainment. He what part of his big shtick was referring to himself as a billionaire, you know, and he's a billionaire, whatever. Like sometimes Donald Trump would be on. They literally had a match together, and then that would be like the battle of the billionaires. And but the reality is they release these lists, these public available lists of like billionaires or whatever, and Vince McMahon fell off that list. Like he was, you know, like whatever, 970 million or something, but like not a billionaire. And that was like, oh my God, he's no longer a billionaire. And it seemed to annoy him or whatever, because it's like a scoreboard and you've just dropped down the scoreboard. So to your game illusion, like maybe it's people are just acquiring this wealth to ratchet up their score to be known as. And then like you've got guys like Bill Gates, who is for the longest time being the richest guy in the world. He donates to all these sort of philanthropic organizations and fighting malaria in Africa, all this sort of stuff, but he's still got crazy amounts of money. Like he gets a lot of recognition for the money and work and efforts that he's doing, but he still has, his wealth is still obscene, his personal wealth. And a lot of that is being constantly refilled through stocks and that. It's just, it just feels like there's no way you can spend it all. And so if you're not paring down to at least like a reasonable amount of wealth, then it becomes, everything above seems obnoxious. And like my verdict is likely skewing negative, partly because of that. But on the other hand, selfishly, individually, if you told me I could be wealthy, like wealthy to the independently wealthy, so like the example Bo was giving, him not working again or whatever, and just like focusing on whatever I want to focus on. If I want to go on a trip, I can afford it, no problem. I want to stay somewhere nice, I can do so, no problem. That sounds like there's an aspirational quality. I think it appeals to us all. Definitely appeals to me. Like I'm like, oh wow, that sounds great for me personally and my family personally. I would love that. Then to go, if you're like, well, Crofton, we can make you a super billionaire. So, well, I'm like, well, okay, but what do I need all this extra stuff for? You know, like I don't get it.
Yeah. So. I mean, I relate a bit to that, because I mean, on the one hand, I'm quite anti-capitalist and anti-wealthy, basically, but essentially, I'm kind of operating under like it's like I'm implicit in that structure, like so as you mentioned earlier, someone, I don't think you said it outright, but like I sort of have a little capitalist game going on because I own a couple of rental properties, right? So I mean, I only got that wealth through working a job and saving a lot of money, and then I put it into, you know, rental income. And again, my whole reason to doing this was that because I feel like I don't own any of these properties, but I always had in my head of like, oh, if I paid off these rental properties in 25 years, then I'll just get money from rental every month. And I'm like, wow, I wouldn't have to do anything and I would work. I mean, I'd have to do something. I have to keep up the properties, but I mean, that's not full-time work, right? So I'm like, this might happen by the time I'm retired, but I was more thinking about it in terms of like, I wish that sort of that had happened to me, that I had like, you know, the choice to do whatever I wanted instead of just like get a job and work for 20 years. So I think of that for like I have a kid now, and I think I don't want him to be like a wealthy snot who feels entitled and doesn't know the value of work or whatever. But I like the idea of being able to leave him wealth in the sense of like options and choice in life, to be like, if you manage this bit of wealth that I have helped create through in my life, your life could be better. So even though like there's one part of me that hates wealth, I'm kind of operating in a way I'm hoping to be able to give my son a sense of, and back to this idea of freedom or leisure, which I think is sort of related to it, at least the way I view it, so that he could decide like, look, I don't want to work much, or maybe I want to do some artsy thing that's not going to make any money, but because of this wealth I have, I can live a decent life through the income it generates.
Did you ever evict those orphans?
No orphans yet. Don't run an orphanage. But,
a starving mother and her orphans.
I need to follow up to what Mike said, because I think that's important right there. What Mike is doing is, because we're talking about wealth strictly in the context of how we know it in a capitalist, democratic society, where with goodwill between all of its citizens who obey the law, that kind of thing. But wealth is not exclusive to us. There are still monarchies in the world, and they have wealth, and they function very differently. The unique property that we have is that Mike has an opportunity to attain a different better options, more leisure, more accessibility, and time to do things on his own, through his own means. He can participate. He's found a path. He is working towards it. It's not easy. It's not to say it's easy, but the rewards are there for him if he makes correct decisions, which is what happens when you play games. Now, in a monarchy, the games are different, right? You can't, if you are a serf, how do you rise to become, I don't know, a courtesan? I don't know what the different cases are. Do you join, how do you join royalty? Or
I feel like you're a butcher hacking apart history really badly right now. You're just like chop, chop, chop.
Well, if you're a butcher in a monarchy,
in your case, like say an untrained butcher, you just hand someone a knife and they're hacking at a corpse.
Is this why he doesn't have any eggs?
Try
to get back to what point
you get what I'm saying. I'm just saying wealth is not exclusive to how we know it, right? We're talking very much in the context of how we know it. But it's important to understand that, like, in certain forms of government, like, the wealth is controlled by the state, like, literally, right? Like, let's take feudal societies. I don't know if that's what a monarchy is.
But that's like the state, and it's different. It's not really the state, because the state is a family. Like, it's a bit different. I mean, right. I see what you're going. I want to come back to like my little story I was making up, because maybe it helped clarify your point. Well, say this works out, and my son is like, hey, maybe I'll go to university, but I have this like income, because the amount of rental properties have is very small. Like say they were paid off, he might make like say $50,000 a year. I think that's pretty good living if you don't have to work. But by today's standards in this country, like that's kind of an entry level university job, and I'm like, I make more than that when I work. I'm not working right now, but I could go and get a job and make more than that, a fair amount more. But for me, I would trade that for the $50,000 and choice, right? And so to me that seems like wealth, and we were getting into the context of this, and it's more like choice. But then say my son was like, great, I have these rental properties, now I'll get a job and I'll buy 10 more. And now he ends up he has this passive income of $250,000 a year by the time he dies. And then he has a kid who does the same. And then eventually it's like what Crofton was talking about, that now it's blown out. It's just the end is to just get more and more. And then if you went back to the root of it, which was me, I would be like, what the fuck, people? The whole point was just to be able to enjoy your life, not to like massive amounts of quantities. And I feel like but it naturally gets out of control because maybe if you're my kid born into somewhat circumstances of wealth, you might just be like, well, why don't I just increase it, because maybe you can. Does it naturally lead to that?
Isn't the theory that if we as individuals in our group don't have the opportunity to do that for ourselves, and that we're beholden to the state or to royalty then the only way to do that is through corruption? I mean, basically. Right, like if there's no option to partner, let's use the word let's use corporate speak, and to partner with other people within the community for the purpose of business, with the end goal to enrich yourself. But I'm sure you tell yourself and your clients, and I don't say that cynically, that you're providing a good life service for people. I mean, renting is important to people. It's their home. Like, it's very important to people who rent that they feel safe and secure. It
was important to those orphans, that's for sure.
It's an important service that you're providing. So even though we're talking about you making money, you're providing a good service, presumably. I'm sure you are, knowing you. But, the point being that you have an opportunity to provide said service in order to accomplish your own goals, whatever they may be, and you partner with other people to do it. Like, you have that agency to do that, and I think there are types of communities which have wealth who don't. Like, if you were trying to accomplish the same goals for your son, Michael, and you were in a monarchy, you might want to, become the mistress of a prince or something like that, and maybe be bestowed with a better position. You can be
like a courtesan.
Like I'm thinking, and I know this isn't a good example, but like in Downton Abbey, when Tom becomes a member of the family, but he's like some Irish guy, right? But he marries.
Spoilers.
And it's not a great example because the country's in flux in terms of its government in England, but still, he becomes a person of means through marriage, effectively, right? And I would think that the way we know wealth is that you can attain it for yourself. And is that a good thing? Like, do we need to have that incentive for people to keep our society standing?
It's a myth. Like, not everyone like that. It's the fundamental
because you're engaged in it,
American dream is that you can become wealthy. That's right. Everyone's kind of desire or goal, but it's not true. And if it was true.
I think you can.
Yeah. Yes, you
just like yes. You can get struck by lightning.
Well, yeah. Well, or it would be like, I mean, the reality is, it's not you can. It's that some people can. And it's like, it's sort of like, I heard recently there's this famous quote about capitalism. It's like, a rising tide floats all boats, and then this person had put a tweak on it. It's like, yeah, that's great if you own a boat. And what if you don't know how to swim? And it's kind of like, that's the kind of actual reality. So the wealth being like, yeah, if you own a boat, then rising tide, great. And I think that it's like, it's a myth because it's kind of, people do attain it, wealth. But like, generally, it's just held out there to kind of like the hope that keeps the bottom,
well, that's where
churning.
That's where I would say we distinguish ourselves, let's say, as Canadians versus even the American system, which is we you don't have a boat, let's build you a boat. You don't know how to swim, let's get you a life jacket and a swim instructor. Like, we have social programs.
No. We're much more like the Americans.
No, but I'm
not
saying,
like what you just described there.
We don't have a healthcare system.
We have very basic needs that are met. Yes, we have a social safety
net. So they don't meet
net,
your standards. I'm not saying give me a bit of evaluation, but we have social programs in place. We have socialist systems.
We definitely start, if there is a ladder of wealth, we definitely, to Bo's point, we start at a higher foothold.
I'm just saying, we don't leave people to drown in our country. That's not the principles.
The most vulnerable members of society are more well protected here, but that doesn't. Sure. But they're not wealthy by any means. Like,
no, but they likely have an easier access to education. Still not great, but then
Again, it's not great, and again, like, these are not really paths to wealth. Like, that someone is able to get. If you're a homeless person able to get healthcare, that's great. Good luck becoming Donald Trump. It's not going to happen. But
that's the opposite end of the conversation. Is that if you have wealthy, then if you have haves and they're protected, what are we doing for the have-nots? Like, how are we treating them?
I'm getting to kind of like I'm getting near my verdict here because
I would very much like to move to verdicts. I feel like this is a dense topic and we're kind of like circling the drain.
Yeah, we sort of are.
Screw you guys! You're only saying that because I started talking.
No.
But I feel like we're just kind of churning through this, and it's kind of a messy one.
Yeah,
and in some ways, it comes back to like the whole. We spend a lot of time trying to messing around with the definition of this thing, and I think for me, part of it is the fact that like what I would consider wealth, and I think some people in the chat were like, "Oh, I describe myself wealthy in these ways and in these ways." And I think that's the kind of right approach to be like, well, what is wealth and what is wealth to you? Because I really think it is attainable for everyone in society to be like, wealthy, which is, and if you define that by being like, you enjoy your life, you're healthy, you have enough food to eat, you have roof over your head, you have some agency in the world and some choice, and everyone can have that. I'm like, yes, that's possible. I think so. But that's a definition of wealth, which isn't the definition of wealth that we live by today. The definition of wealth today is like you have $8 billion and you're making more.
I was hoping he was going to say eggs. I'm not going to.
Me too. I was really hoping.
Perfect. Eggs, and someone else got none.
Yeah.
But I mean,
you're drowning in omelets.
So, and again, as much as I would like the definition of wealth to be like that basic thing of like you have some choice, whatever, that's not what it is. When we talk about the wealthy in our world, we're talking about Donald Trump, we're talking about Bill Gates, we're talking about people who are uber rich. They're not the people that are just like, oh yeah, hey, I don't have to work now. Maybe I'll just take it easy and live off my meager savings.
If I'm making minimum,
that's not what I'm talking about.
I'm just going to say this again, and not to, context is important. But if you're someone who's minimum wage, and you're looking at someone who's making 100 to 200 grand a year, which by your definition is not wealthy, you probably want to say, you know what, Mike, F you, because that's like a lot of it has to do with context.
And we said that at the beginning.
I just think I think it's important to acknowledge it. We can move into
and I actually agree with that. I point out and I pointed this out constantly, that I say to pretty much everyone who lives in Canada, and a large portion of the states are like the equivalent of the aristocrats. Like I tell all my friends, you're a rich person. Like I'm a rich person.
He's really fun at parties.
Yeah, I know. No one likes being
quit
told
your
they're
complaining
rich.
about your parking ticket, you rich bastard.
There are children dying in Africa. Enjoy
you know
that hors d'oeuvre, you rich bastard.
But here, this is a salient point about this, which is like comes back to Bo's, what Bo was just trying to make me feel bad about. People who make minimum wage.
Feel bad. I was just trying.
No, but let me just finish, because I think this is kind of an interesting point. Because I'll point out to rich people like Crofton, and who doesn't like to hear that he's rich, and I'm a rich person because I have a job when I work that I make like $65,000 a year, and my wife has a good job. It's great. In the context of the world, we're rich people, but the reason why it irks everyone that I tell to at dinner parties who never invite me back, the reason I tell them that, but the reason it irks them is because they have a giant mortgage to pay. They got to go to work. They don't necessarily love their jobs. And if they didn't have to, they might not do it. And again, that comes back to like, yes, they might have money, but they're not wealthy. Wealthy is that you have you're sitting on a pile and you have choice. You say, what do I want to do? I'll start a business. I'll do whatever I want, because that's the difference. And even if you make 200 grand a year, but you have to do it till you retire, it's different than just sitting on a pile.
To me, that's a clear distinction, and definitely I agree with that. It's accessibility, choice.
And I do,
choice,
yeah.
And I'm sorry, people who work 24/7 but don't have to, who choose to, that is your leisure. When it dovetails with what you love to do, it's different than someone that you described, which is what happens if I don't work next week? Well, foreclosed house, bankruptcy, et cetera, et cetera. So.
God, you both are competing for who can have the last word with the biggest rant. Let's just do verdicts.
That's Crofton's sneaky way of getting the last word. Screw you, Crofton.
I need some eggs.
Order, I say. Order in the court.
Order in the court. It's time for verdicts. Who would like to verdictize first?
I'll go first because whatever. I haven't spoken for a while.
Passion and enthusiasm.
This is a complicated one, and it's one that is very much based off point of view. And we talked about context at the beginning, about how, depending on where you are in the world, wealth means different things to you. And Mike closed off there talking about how everyone is in our area is rich in that context, but not necessarily wealthy in that context. And I think that's worth bearing in mind. So wealth has this aspirational quality to it, in which, the lottery commercials run with the "just imagine" slogans, or the Freedom 55 with the idea that you're going to retire at 55, and you will have the wealth to carry you through, and it will allow you to do essentially what what is an early retirement. It's more time to pursue your personal goals, your personal aspirations, and not worry about work. So do I want to be wealthy? Yes, absolutely I do. Do I want my family to be wealthy? Yes, absolutely I do. Do I want Mike and Bo to be wealthy? I don't know. Kind of depends. Depends on the day, how I'm
Screw
You'd
feeling.
be
you,
like
give me your
less
eggs.
wealthy than me.
Yeah, less wealthy than me, obviously, dependent on my wealth. But definitely. So I'm cognizant of that about myself, that I would like to be wealthy. Do I want to be super wealthy? Like, not really. And it just, I'm not just saying that. It's just like, I just don't know. Like, I guess I would just take a big chunk of money and give it to charity or give it to something. Like, at a certain point, like, I don't understand why you need all this crazy higher amount. And that's where we see, and to Bo's point about the game of wealth, and people playing it just to wealth, to have wealth and to be wealthy and to be aristocratic and that sort of thing. That's really negative. I see no upside to that. And so, because of recognizing the negative attributes of the chase for wealth, what it can do to people, recognizing uh, my own interests in being personally wealthy in the current system, I can't go out and say wealth is bad, although I'm leaning negatively towards it. I'm just going to go and say that in the concept of wealth in general, as well as being wealthy, is a bullshit concept. So bullshit.
I'll go next because I feel like I will echo a lot of what Crofton says. I kind of agree with pretty much exactly how he laid it off. Um, but I think I'd go. The one thing I'd add is for me it's like dealing with the current definition of wealth. And again, when I think of just think of lifestyles of the rich and famous, that kind of thing, and that's when I think of wealth, like mansions and riches. And I'm like, for that stuff for me is wholly bad. Like when you want that much, and worse off, that much more than everyone else, that I can't see that as anything but bad. And for me, we talked a lot about the definitions of wealth, and I really think they are malleable. And the little asterisk here was to focus on financial, monetary, and I think living in the real world, we focused on what it is in today. But I really would love to see that definition shift to one that's more plural, and that everyone really could be wealthy. If we, it's not everyone living in a mansion and driving a Lamborghini. That's impossible. Like, not everyone can have that much resources devoted to them. Impossible. But certainly everyone could be happy, healthy, have choice, enjoy their lives, feel safe and secure. And if that's how we define wealth, I feel everyone could be wealthy. But in the current context, like, so, and even though, like Crofton, I'm kind of a little bit in the games that I'm trying to acquire wealth maybe for the next generation of my family to have it better than I did. I'm in that game, and so I'm kind of complicit in the current system. But I would give it up in a heartbeat if there was an option for a better system for all. I would like cash out of it, because I might stand to do well if I keep doing this. But I would rather a different definition of wealth that benefited more than personally do well in the current system as it is, because I feel like it's that negative as a whole. So I'm going to say wealth is bad. I really, it irks me. But I think I'm not far off from Crofton, actually. But it tweaks me, so I had to go full bad.
All right, so good verdicts, interesting ideas. I liked all of it. I've got a little bit of a different take. I can't get my mind off the fact that, and I think this resonates to everyone, that there is no wealth without the initial labor associated with generating wealth in any given system. That it's like the icing on a cake, and there's always more cake and not a lot of icing. That's always how cakes are made. They're also made with eggs.
There it is.
You're welcome. So the point being is that, to me, it sort of stands to reason that even if you take money out of it, because money is just a representation of goods, services, labor, and translate it into such that, that on some level, a lot of it has to be expended to produce a little, which is then hoarded by a small percentage of a given group. So basically, if no one gets up and hunts, and no one goes and picks bananas and puts them in a basket, there's nobody with an abundance of resources in a given system. Whether you make people pay taxes in your feudal society, or you provide them with a game to play in a capitalist society, there are always a lot of individuals doing the work, and without that work, there is no wealth in a community. It just doesn't happen because the wealth is generated from the work, for the most part, or from assignment of property, which is effectively the same thing. So the point being that what we're trying to do right now, I think, given our sensibilities, is we mentioned robots on the show. Robots are real cool. And one of the things we know on some level that this is true, that someone's got to suffer. We got to have slaves if we're going to, get free labor and all become wealthy and live off of it. Or we got to have serfs, or we got to exploit people. Now we're doing the great big democratic experiment where we give everyone agency within the group, and everyone has a chance to be the best. But as Mike pointed out, not everyone will have a nice boat. And so it seems to me it's always inherently unfair. And I think the great big deal with robots is that, we can all finally be wealthy because we can make slaves of things that don't have souls or are sentient or affect our sensibilities, that we might be perceived to be hurting people or other species or anything. Robots, none of that. And to me, that says something about our conscience about wealth, in that it's inherently bad and we don't know how to fix it. We don't know how to fix it. We don't know how to get rid of the accumulation of an unjust amount of resources for power or for fun or for whatever the reason being. So it's almost a little bit like it's a principle that's difficult to escape. But it seems to me that it affects us negatively.
I feel like you're deep in a labyrinth right here, Bo, and you're like,
I
don't know.
I'm
which
finding
route
my
may
way.
be
I have my sword, my elephant sword that glows blue when I'm getting close to the truth of the matter. And let me tell you,
Is it red right now? 'Cause I don't think you're that close to the truth.
I'm very close, sir.
You interrupted him. I was going to see how far he was going to go.
I'm very close, sir. And so it's interesting because if we do get robots to take care of and make us all wealthy, doesn't that make wealth good? Doesn't it make wealth good? I believe in robots. I think wealth is good.
So what you said, so in a theoretical society where robots...
Not theoretical.
Did he just give his verdict?
I did. Because you guys were rushing me, so fine. Let me be succinct here. We are trying to solve the problem of wealth. We're trying to assuage our conscience because of wealth. We're trying to build robots with the hopes that they can take all of our shitty jobs so we don't have to have slaves, serfs, or any other people beneath us, and that we can all live a life of leisure while Robot McRobot picks the bananas, gives it to me, and clips my toenails, and provides me with a happy life, and I don't have to feel bad that I'm making a slave do it or indentured servant do it. So that means it's got to be worth. If it's worth all of this effort, it's got to mean it's a good thing. It's just shitty to do to one another. So I'm going to say
wealth is good.
Wealth is good.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
It's funny.
Do it, boys. Wealth is good. I'm the bad
exactly,
guy.
But you think wealth is good. Okay.
One thing I find funny is every once in a while there's once we let Bo go last, which is always a mistake. But when we let Bo go last and we've gone the
my verdict was good. Screw you guys.
Two of the three verdicts.
It's like letting a wild animal go in like a mall or something.
No, but we've
tearing
done.
Screw you guys.
We've
My
done
verdict
was
the best verdict I've
bullshit
given.
and bad. It's just interesting watching him do calisthenics to contort himself into the third verdict. Even if it doesn't match anything that he said, he's like, I must say it's good. We must have the full spread. How am I going to do this? I know, robots.
Life is full of things that don't add up. Life is.
I did feel like you contorted some definitions to suit a verdict.
See, when the Native Americans saw boats for the first time, they didn't see boats. They didn't understand what they were seeing at first. I think that's how you're looking at my verdict. I think that's how you're looking at it looks contorted to me. I can't perceive it because I've never perceived such a thing before.
I just feel like instead of dealing with the definition or looking at what wealth is today, you said in a theoretical society where robots provide us with free wealth in that context is good. And I was like, yes, if I were to be like, in a utopia where everyone is wealthy and yet no one is exploiting anyone else, I'd be like, sure, it's good. That's just not what it is today. That's why I'm
All right,
but the
all right,
point
peace.
is that we're expending enough energy in that direction that it must be worth doing.
Crofton needs to tell people how to
If you
defund
guys,
our show.
if you listeners want to send us your crazy rants, now you know that we endorse them. You can by sending us long emails, goodbadbull@gmail.com. And honestly, we want to hear from you on all the topics. Often they're complex like this one. Sometimes they're simpler. We want to know what people's verdicts are and what their thoughts are on the topics. And if you're okay with us reading them out on the show, we'd let us know, because we'd love to do that as well. So goodbadbull.com. It's a website. You can find all our old shows there. We got almost at 190. iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. You can find the show there. Please give us a review. Maybe a nice little comment. 5 stars. Crofton the best. Love eggs. XOXO. You can also find us on Twitter at goodbadbull, where our default picture is not the Twitter egg. We actually have a photo of the GBB stuff. And we got a Facebook page /goodbadbull. And of course, we're individuals of an individual nature. So where can we be reached? So drawing way back to the beginning of this, Subway, Mike Hodgins, where can people reach you?
You can find me on the Twitter at ML Hodgins. And apparently I made a tweet not that long ago. Bo told me, but I forgot that I had tweeted it. So yeah, go check it out.
About maple syrup. Also, somebody way more active on the @Twitter is KFC himself, Bo Schwartz. Bo, where can people reach you?
All right, guys, you can find me on Twitter at Bo Schwartz, talking about Heroes of the Storm and tasty chicken.
And
don't forget our plug Patreon. Don't forget our Patreon.
Patreon, we love our listeners, our Patreon donators and stuff. You can go to patreon.com/goodbadbull. Please show us your support if you love the show. We really
hashtag make Bull wealthy.
Appreciate it. Yeah, make us wealthy. And you can follow me at Crofton Steers, or I'll be making omelets and live streaming it, because I'm really now quite hungry for eggs.
And we want to thank the people who are currently our patrons. I want to thank them. Crofton doesn't. He just wants you to make.
I did thank them.
You did?
Yes. Just like 2 seconds ago.
Oops.
I'm the best host. So, gentlemen, bringing that all back, do you think that this conversation was redundant with any of our previous conversations on like capitalism, money, or all this, or did you feel?
I think it was somewhat redundant. I'm mostly focused on wanting to give Bo a Shawinigan handshake right now, which is not much context for our listeners.
Throttle.
But
just Google it. Shawinigan, how it sounds. Handshake. Now, you'll see what I want to do to Bo.
Okay.
Sounds dirty, Mike.
So this show actually made me realize a good topic for us if we wanted to do a not random topic would be eggs. Like, I think we could do a show on eggs, because I think people have some serious issue with eating chicken fetuses and stuff.
I feel like at this point, Bo's not. You remember I made the analogy of him butchering an animal without knowing what to do, but now he's like trying to cut he's just got like a piece of wood and he's just beating something.
Hey man, conversation is the foundation.
Why won't it come apart?
Conversation is the foundation of higher thought. We're all here to hear each other's ideas and think about how they inspire one another, even if maybe you can't see. It looks like contortion to you. Yeah.
It's funny. It's too bad the topic wasn't euthanasia today, because it feels like Bo's trying to kill us. I'm laughing at my own joke. Yeah. Okay.
You're hosting. You're supposed to, as a host of this week's episode.
We're done. Oh, I'm sure we're done. You would have faded out somewhere in here, right? Right? You can.
I guess I have to now because you broke the fourth wall. So
no. Look, here's the deal, future Bo, who's doing the editing of this show. You can fade out like now. There. See, I gave it to you. You're always asking for a perfect moment.
Maybe by the time the Bo goes to do the show, it'll be a robot doing it, and he'll be living on a yacht somewhere.
He'll be wealthy
because the robot will do the work.
He'll be like, "Make me an omelet, Jeeves."
You guys don't. You guys think it's really that
It'd be
cracked?
like,
What I was saying?
yes, master, and then it sparks, must destroy
You're not
humanity.
saying. You're not saying you
No,
feel
no.
less guilty about having a robot do your work for you than a teenager.
Didn't you ever
at
see the
McDonald's?
Star Trek TNG
No.
episode where they had the little robot things that they were sending in to die, and then they realized they were sentient, and it was this big problem?
Yeah, but the point is,
So I
we're
think
not
you need
gonna
to.
we're
I
not
think you need to
making.
binge watch the whole series again.
I didn't
No,
say
but I
sentient
agree.
robots. I said automatons, like no
Has
souls.
Picard taught you nothing, Bo?
That's the outro. That's where the volume's supposed to come up. That was perfect.
No,
Well done, Mike.
Bo, I
That's-
just want to say that, like, no, I totally get what you're saying, like with the automation of things, and like if we all had like minimum wages and all that sort of stuff. But Mike is right; it is a bit of a hypothetical.
Yeah. My issue is the
scenario.
if. And it's like, great, I'm all for that. Like, if people weren't dumb, the world would be better. Yes, it would be. If.
Well, but the point is, the things we aspire to mean something, and I was saying that aspiration to
They
make us
often
all wealthy.
don't, though.
That aspiration
no,
to
I
make us
agree.
all
I see
wealthy
what Bo's saying.
says something about us, and that's what I was basing my verdict on.
Yeah, no, I could see that.
But I can
like
see how
your
it's just,
second
you know-
take of it.
Yeah, the one that
yeah, the second one was more concise.
it was
first
5 words, and you immediately understood it.
Yeah, when you explained it really quickly, I got it quite well.
I'm sorry that there was a few times during that episode, Bo, where I felt like I had to jump in and be like, "What? What are you talking about?" There
You
There was one
guys are
bit
just
about the
tired.
whole-
You're raising kids. You're having a hard time concentrating.
monarchy,
But I've,
feudal system. And I'm like, no, that's not correct. What is he talking about?
It's funny because sometimes, like, because I'm watching the playoffs, I'm watching some of these sports shows where they're like a panel, and I've noticed how, because they're asked a question like, so who do you think is doing well or whatever, and each of the talking heads will talk for like 20 seconds or whatever and just cut off perfectly, and then the next guy will get in and they'll all perfectly get in. They've clearly set up their shit
There's probably a
beforehand.
director too behind the screen who's like,
Oh, maybe, but it's just like I appreciate so much more when doing these podcasts, because I'm like, man, like the director, I could just imagine if we had a director, he's like hanging himself at the end. He's like,
It's funny if that's what,
Bo's talking about like feudal society, and he's just like, I need to drink.
It's like feudal society, and then it'd be like if you came in and out at like a bow during the halfway bow rant, he's like, in feudal society, blah blah, and then it fades out, and he's like, robot hive mind, blah blah blah, and people be like, is this the same? He's still how is those things related? It's like, no, he tied them together somehow.
And it gets back, and then it's just there's a pause, and Mike's like, I'm sorry, Bo, that's all wrong. And then it gets back to me making a pithy
I
remark.
made a
Bo, I
tweet
give
about
him
today's
abuse.
show saying that I love eggs and I love robots. You guys should like my tweet,
Okay,
and I'll like your
I'll
tweet.
retweet it.
I feel like what's going through Michael Hodges' mind right now is like, I could be spending time with my kids instead of listening to Bo asking me to like his social media.
His kid is sleeping.
Oh,
Let's
wow.
wake him up.
Okay, sorry. Let me rephrase that. I could be spending time doing anything else, but obliging a dumb request.
No, I'm gonna retweet that eggs.
I think
thing
that was
right
good. I like the episodes where we differ in opinion a bit, right? Because that's how we. Even if, let's say, objectively, I'm willing to admit there might have been some cohesion issues with my with the ideas I was putting forward. It's still good
cool.
to have the waves crashing into each other instead of we always complain when we have a echo chamber show. It's definitely not an echo chamber show, so that's good, right?
It was beautiful chaos.
And I like our eggs bit. The eggs thing was great and came out of nowhere, and it has a life of its own now. I think we should do an episode about eggs.
as I'm about ready to go to sleep. What's is live stream still there?
All right, live streamers,
So,
thanks so much for hanging in. We let them in on some of our post-show banter. Good to see you, Wicked Kitten 13. As usual, go get some hash browns and some IHOP.
Enjoy
You deserve
them.
it. And
Get some nugs.
Tandagosa, who I see all the time in the Frog Pants chat, is here today. I'm very honored by your visit, so thank you. And also, you had a pretty funny little joke in there. So tell your friends. And till next time, When you guys are doing this, you do get all 3 cams up and sync them so well. Wait, that. Okay, so I got one more thing. 2 dogs porking. Username 2 dogs porking says, when you guys are doing this, you get all 3 cams up and sync them so well. I feel like that is like I'm learning to say the nice things and failing so hard at it.
Was that sarcasm?
Probably.
That's great. It's a good one. 2 dogs porking. That was a good joke. But thanks so much. All right. Well, that's going to conclude the show. I'm just gonna say bye. Turn it off. VOD viewers, we also love you. Take care. Say bye, people.
Bye, people.